There's a moment at night when the world finally goes silent. No notifications, no conversations, no one asking how you are. And suddenly, it's just you. Most people are terrified of that moment because loneliness feels like standing in front of a mirror that refuses to lie. But what if loneliness was never your enemy? What if the moments that broke you, the empty rooms, the unanswered messages, the nights you felt forgotten, were actually shaping a version of you the world could never destroy? We live in a generation addicted to noise. People scroll endlessly just to escape their own thoughts. They surround themselves with crowds, music, attention, relationships, anything to avoid being alone for even a second. Because being alone forces you to face the hardest questions. Who are you when nobody is watching? Who are you when nobody applauds you? Who are you without distractions? And that's exactly why loneliness is powerful. Because in loneliness, masks fall apart. Ego becomes quiet. And for the first time, you begin hearing your real voice beneath the chaos. Some of the strongest people you admire today were built in isolation, not in comfort, not in validation, but in silence. A silent room can either destroy a person or transform them. Loneliness teaches you how to survive without constant reassurance. It teaches emotional endurance, mental discipline, self-respect, and the dangerous ability to stand alone without begging for attention. When nobody stays, you learn to stay for yourself. And that changes everything. Because once you master solitude, the world can no longer manipulate you with fear of abandonment. You stop chasing people. Stop shrinking yourself for acceptance. Stop depending on others to feel worthy. You become calm, focused, unshakable. So if you feel alone right now, don't run from it. Sit in it. Listen to it. Grow through it. Because sometimes the greatest transformation of your life begins in the exact moment you think you have nobody. The strange thing about loneliness is that it introduces you to someone you've been avoiding your entire life, yourself. Most people spend years surrounded by noise, friends, social media, work, relationships, endless distractions. And because of that, they never truly stop to ask, what do I actually want? What kind of life makes me happy? Who am I when nobody influences me? But loneliness forces those questions to appear. At first, it feels uncomfortable. When you sit alone in your room with no one to talk to, your mind becomes louder than ever. You begin replaying memories, mistakes, regrets, things you tried to ignore for years. And honestly, that can be painful. But pain is sometimes the beginning of self-awareness. Because when everything becomes quiet, you finally hear your real thoughts. Not society's expectations, not your friends' opinions, not the version of yourself you created just to fit in. The real you. And that's powerful. A lot of people live their entire lives wearing masks. They pretend to be strong, pretend to be happy, pretend to know where they're going. But loneliness strips all of that away. It reveals what truly matters to you. Maybe you discover that you've been chasing other people's dreams. Maybe you realize you've been staying in toxic relationships just because you were afraid of being alone. Maybe you understand that the person you needed most was yourself. That realization changes everything. Because once you understand yourself deeply, people can no longer control your identity. You stop needing constant validation. You stop comparing your life to everyone online. You stop begging to be accepted. Instead, you become more honest with yourself. And that honesty creates peace. Some of the greatest transformations happen in isolation. A person sitting alone, thinking deeply, questioning life, rebuilding their mindset, may look lonely from the outside, but inside, they are becoming stronger than ever before. Because self-discovery does not happen in crowds. It happens in silence. One of the hardest lessons loneliness teaches you is how to survive without constantly being saved by someone else. And that lesson changes a person forever. When people are always surrounded by others, they unconsciously become dependent. Dependent on attention, dependent on reassurance, dependent on someone saying, "It's okay." But loneliness removes that safety net. Suddenly there's nobody to carry your emotions for you, nobody answering immediately, nobody always checking if you're fine. And in those moments, you face a choice. Either break apart or become stronger. At first, it feels unbearable. You may feel abandoned, invisible, even lost. But slowly, something powerful begins to happen. You start learning how to handle your own pain. You stop expecting people to rescue you every time life gets difficult. You begin solving problems alone, making decisions alone, recovering alone. And every time you survive a difficult moment by yourself, your confidence grows quietly. That is how inner strength is built. Not through comfort, not through easy days, but through moments where you had no choice except to keep going. Think about it. Some of the strongest people you know probably went through seasons where they had nobody, no support, no applause, no one truly understanding what they were carrying inside. Yet somehow, they kept moving forward. Why? Because loneliness forced them to discover a strength they never knew existed. And the beautiful thing is this. Once you learn how to stand alone, fear loses power over you. You no longer stay in unhealthy relationships just because you're afraid of being lonely. You no longer tolerate disrespect just to keep people around. You no longer chase attention to feel valuable because you realize something important. Being alone is far better than losing yourself for acceptance. That realization creates independence. Real independence is not about never needing people. It's about not depending on people to define your worth. There's a huge difference. A strong person can love others deeply while still being emotionally grounded within themselves. And loneliness helps build that foundation. It teaches emotional control, patience, mental endurance. It teaches you how to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of escaping them through distractions. That's why many people fear loneliness, because loneliness exposes weakness. But if you stay long enough, if you keep growing through it instead of running from it, that same loneliness becomes training. Your mind becomes calmer. Your emotions become stronger. Your decisions become wiser. And one day you'll notice something incredible. The things that once destroyed you no longer have power over you anymore, because you've already survived your darkest nights alone. And a person who learns how to survive alone becomes very difficult to break. There is a reason why so many great ideas are born in silence, because creativity needs space, and loneliness creates that space. In today's world, our minds are constantly under attack. Notifications, videos, messages, endless noise, every single day. Most people never spend enough time alone to truly think deeply. They react to life, but rarely reflect on it. But when loneliness enters your life, something changes. The noise disappears, and for the first time in a long time, your mind begins to breathe. You start noticing thoughts you ignored before, dreams you buried, ideas hidden beneath years of distraction. That's why many artists, writers, musicians, and inventors created their best work during lonely periods of their lives. Because isolation forces the mind inward. And inside every human being is an entire world waiting to be discovered. Sometimes loneliness gives birth to creativity, because pain sharpens awareness. You begin seeing emotions more clearly. You observe people differently. You understand life on a deeper level. And deep understanding often becomes art. A lonely person may write words that heal millions, compose music that touches hearts, create ideas that change the world. Not because loneliness is magical, but because silence allows truth to rise to the surface. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, you rarely hear your deepest thoughts. But in solitude, your imagination grows louder. You begin asking bigger questions. What kind of life do I truly want? What do I want to create before I die? What impact do I want to leave behind? Those questions awaken purpose, and purpose gives life direction. That's why loneliness should not always be seen as emptiness. Sometimes it is preparation. Preparation for growth. Preparation for clarity. Preparation for the version of yourself that has not fully awakened yet. Because some ideas can only be heard when the world becomes quiet enough. So in the end, maybe loneliness was never meant to destroy you. Maybe it came into your life to rebuild you. Not every lonely season is a punishment. Sometimes it is a period of transformation. Because when everything becomes quiet, you begin hearing the parts of yourself that were buried beneath noise, fear, and distraction. Loneliness teaches you lessons that comfort never could. It teaches you how to survive emotionally, how to think independently, how to sit with yourself without needing constant validation from the world. And slowly, you become stronger, not louder, not colder, but deeper. You stop chasing people who do not value you. You stop depending on attention to feel important. You stop running away from yourself. Instead, you become someone who can stand alone with peace in their heart. That is real power. Because the strongest people are not always the ones surrounded by crowds. Sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who fought silent battles alone and still chose to keep going. So if you are in a lonely chapter of your life right now, remember this: your story is not over. This isolation may feel painful today, but it could be preparing you for a stronger future you cannot see yet. One day you may look back at these quiet nights, these empty moments, these painful seasons, and realize they were shaping the person you were meant to become. A wiser person, a calmer person, a more unshakable person. Because growth often happens in silence, and some of the most powerful transformations are invisible at first. So don't fear loneliness. Learn from it. Grow through it. Let it teach you who you truly are. Because once you become comfortable being alone, you unlock a kind of strength that nobody can take away from you. And maybe that is the true power of loneliness.